In the early hours of August the 3rd, a UAV attack triggered a massive explosion at an oil depot near Sochi airport, forcing Russia to suspend flights and heighten security alerts. Meanwhile, Russia has been launching missiles and drones at an unprecedented scale into Ukraine in recent weeks. Peace talks continued in Turkey last July, but have yet to yield a lasting ceasefire agreement. US President Donald Trump has warned of imposing additional sanctions on Russia, and countries continue to importing goods from it. How has the Kremlin responded to Trump's threats? And how intense have the developments on the ground been in recent days? Follow the full updates in today's video.
On August 3rd, U.S. President Donald Trump stated that Special Envoy Steve Witkoff may travel to Russia this week, expected on August 6th or 7th, while warning that sanctions would be imposed if Moscow does not agree to a ceasefire by August 8th.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is it what Steve Witkoff's message will be to the Russians? Is there anything they can do to avoid sanctions at this point?
Yeah, get a deal where people stop getting killed. They had a number that just came out that a tremendous number of Russian soldiers are being killed. And likewise, Ukraine, a lower number, but still thousands and thousands of people. And now we're adding towns where they're being hit by missiles. So it's a lot of people being killed in that ridiculous war. And, you know, we stopped a lot of countries from war, India and Pakistan. We stopped a lot of countries. And we're going to get that one stopped, too. Somehow we're going to get that one stopped. That's a really horrible.
The President, can you give us an update on Steve Witkoff in Russia, and what happens on Friday if the deadline comes and Russia has not agreed to a ceasefire?
Well, there'll be sanctions, but they seem to be pretty good at avoiding sanctions. You know, they're wily characters, and they're pretty good at avoiding sanctions. So we'll see what happens. But Steve is focused right now on the border in terms of, we're talking about with Gaza, getting people fed. And he may be going, I think next week, Wednesday or Thursday, may be going to Russia. They would like to see him. They've asked that he meet, so we'll see what happens.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin stated that it continues to take note of all of President Trump's statements, but asserted that Russia has become immune to sanctions.
We've lived under a massive number of sanctions for quite some time now. Our economy has been operating under extensive restrictions, so naturally, we've developed a certain immunity. We continue to note all statements coming from President Trump and other international representatives on this matter.
In a video address on the evening of Friday, August 1st, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned Russian airstrikes on Kyiv, calling them one of the most brutal attacks on the capital. He stated that residential buildings, businesses, and a mosque were damaged, emphasizing that these attacks had no military objective.
Today, search operations were completed at the site of the Russian strike on Kyiv, a regular residential building, a direct hit. The missile killed 28 people there. In total, 31 were killed in the city by that strike, including 5 children. The children were born in 2007, 2011, 2014, 2018, and even 2022. My condolences to their families and loved ones. This was one of the most brutal Russian attacks on Kyiv. A total of 159 people were injured. Ordinary residential buildings, businesses, and even one of Kyiv's mosques were hit. There was no military purpose. Many around the world have expressed support for Ukraine and condemned Russian terror, their strikes, and Russia's refusal to end the war. Ceasefire proposals have been on the table for a long time. Ukrainian proposals, American proposals, and many others globally have raised this with Russia. Each time, the only response is an attempt to buy more time for war, more time for terror. That's the only way Russia operates. And now, the prospect of new and strong sanctions, not only against the aggressor state itself, has begun to pressure Russia. Every Russian financial flow, every scheme that fills the Russian budget must become a global target. Only this will persuade Moscow to work toward peace. Ukraine is grateful to the United States of America, to Europe, and to all our friends around the world who seek peace. Ukraine is ready to act as quickly as possible for the sake of peace. We all clearly understand what steps are needed. We know who in Russia has the authority to make decisions. That is why Ukraine is once again proposing to move beyond technical level discussions, beyond mere exchanges of statements, and to actually meet at the level of leaders. I want to thank President Trump for his willingness to engage in such a meeting. I am grateful to everyone who supports this. What's needed now is Russia's readiness. The head of the presidential office, the secretary of the National Security and Defense Council, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs will continue communications with our partners on this matter.
Speaking before the United Nations Security Council in New York on August 1st, senior UN official Miroslav Yencha stated that on the night of July 30th to 31st, a large-scale Russian missile and drone attack targeted Kyiv. At least 31 people, including 5 children, were killed, and 159 others, including at least 16 children, were injured. This marks the highest number of children injured in a single night in the city since the war began.
The Ukrainian people have endured nearly 3.5 years of unimaginable horrors, death, devastation, and destruction. They urgently need relief from this nightmare. We therefore reiterate our urgent call for an immediate, unconditional, and complete ceasefire to pave the way towards a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace. A peace that is in line with the Charter of the United Nations, international law, and relevant UN resolutions in full respect of the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders. Diplomacy, not fighting, needs to escalate in the coming days and weeks. Diplomacy that leads to real, tangible, verifiable, and lasting results that would be felt by the long-suffering people on the ground. The United Nations remains ready to support all meaningful efforts to this end.
On the Russian side, Ambassador Dmitry Polyansky stated that the expired princeling in Kyiv is not interested in easing the plight and suffering of his civilians, but rather in presenting such situations provoked by him, presenting them as intentional Russian strikes.
His only goal here is to save his own hide and convince his sponsors to continue financial and military support to his agonizing dictatorial and corrupted regime. The abuse of the Security Council meetings so as to shift the responsibility for the death of his own citizens is a favorite trick of Ukraine. In conclusion, let me underscore once again that we are not against discussing the Ukrainian crisis in the Council. We're against making the tragedy of the Ukrainians who became hostages of the Zelensky regime and his maniacal will to sacrifice them on the altar of geopolitical interests that is exploited in the Council for political reasons. It's disrespectful and indifferent to the suffering of tens of thousands of people who are dying and suffering in other areas of the world, and Western members of Security Council are in no hurry to ask for meetings on that.
In light of Russia's intensified aerial assaults on Ukraine and the increasing toll on civilian life, on July 29th, President Trump clearly stated a peace deal must be done within 10 days. Otherwise, the United States is prepared to implement additional measures to secure peace. President Trump is offering both Russia and Ukraine a way out of this conflict. Once again, we implore them to take it.
Once again, the world witnessed Russia's response to our desire for peace. shared with the United States and Europe, with new killings and more destroyed homes. It is a deliberate campaign to terrorize civilians and destroy any notion of normal life in Ukraine. This effort is propped up by Iran and DPRK in blatant defiance of numerous Security Council resolutions. These regimes supply Moscow with drones, missiles, and ammunition, while Chinese companies continue to provide dual-use goods and equipment, contributions that further fuel Russia's ability to wage war and deepen the suffering inflicted on our people. Russia awaits the international law to be defeated. They believe that the world will look away and that justice will be avoided. Don't push the horses. This will not happen. Russian illusions will shatter against the unbreakable resilience of Ukrainian people. Russian illusions will shatter against the unyielding will of the international community, because we stand united in defense of justice and freedom.
According to Yuri Wachako, founder and CEO of Hope for Ukraine charity, speaking to ABC News, Ukraine is currently facing approximately 300 to 400 drone attacks daily on civilian targets, an unprecedented number compared to 2023 or 2024. The latest developments in the Russia-Ukraine conflict will be continuously updated in our upcoming videos. Thank you for your attention and support.